Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. I'm excited here because we're going to make the link directly from your veteran series into some Workday and HR, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And I'm super excited for this guest. Today, we're joined by someone who has not only shaped the evolution of HR tech and tech in general from the inside out, but really brings a unique leadership lens from his time in the military, still in the military, really to bringing it into the workplace and tech platforms of the world. So please welcome Colonel Select, Joe Wilson, U.S. Air Force officer, the global CTO at Workday, and leader, technologist, innovator, really on the edge of technology. So thank you so much for joining us, Joe.
I'm super happy to be here, Pete, and always good to be in the company of legendary folks like Julie.
Yes, she is very legendary. But look, Joe and I got acquainted out in Napa at the Workday Innovation Summit. We hit it off as veterans, and we started opining. And I was like, "You got to come on. We have a whole veteran series where we've talked a lot about transition and how to tap into that skill set that's out there. I mean, just the rich skills amongst the veteran community." And just all that you're doing over there, Workday with tech and just the cool stuff that's coming out. I thought it'd be a great episode. So, Julie, you want to go ahead and do the honors?
Yeah, I sure will. I mean, Pete's out there, forming new friends faster than we can count. I always get to ask the fun stuff like, Joe, how did you find your way into HR and why do you stay?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny, too, because when I think about it, a lot of my friends through this kind of evolution of 30 years in tech, they've gone and done really epic things that might be more consumer grade and more recognizable. So I've got friends that work on the social platforms. I've got friends that are actually in the game dev orgs, right, that are doing the Candy Crushes or whatever it is. And that's pretty fun. But I actually love the purpose, kind of this mission mindset that we have, if you will, to materially improve the lives of kind of the end user within an organization. And that's one of the reasons I stay kind of in that classic back office. So you're behind the scenes, but I still think it matters. And I just really enjoy it because these are really hard problems, and not just from a kind of a myopic perspective. We're thinking macro, we're thinking global. And so how do you solve for these problems on the global stage so that people can remain relevant, that they can remain engaged, that they can remain upskilled, that they can do all the things they need to do to be happy, right? Because if you're happy, generally life is just better, not just for you, but for everybody else. So that's my reason why, and I'm loving it. The journey has been epic.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love that. Back office is the backbone as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
So.
Oh, see, that was way more eloquent. Whoa.
Yeah, I love that.
I was thinking people operations brings purpose. That's where my mind went.
Yeah, I've always been like bound towards the idea of being kind of a mission focused person, right? My father was a career soldier in the regular army for 30 years. I moved around the world with him. I spent most of my formative years outside of America. Like, I love the idea of kind of this we before me model. And I think we're getting to do that still in HR tech today. And even beyond the boundary of HR, I mean, our close friend on the finance side, which Workday does both sides of the equation, right? It's just really amazing to work super hard to deliver something that materially improves not only function from an efficiency or effectiveness perspective, but also alleviates a lot of those kind of sins of the past that we as the end user, the worker, had to care about. And now, hopefully, we're on this cusp where we can start to be more engaged at the knowledge level and adding real value. And I don't know, gasp, right? Go home on time and not worry about work.
Yeah. And for how long has the back office struggled, right? Like, I mean, we've all lived it, right? In HR and finance. I've kind of straddled both being a payroll leader over the years. And it's just like, why is this stuff still broken? And how have we not, after all this innovation, fixed and solved some of these things? And so I love the revolution that's coming, right? This experience platforms, the augmentation, the elevation of people doing the work. And it's very, very exciting. It's also a little scary, but super, super exciting. So look, I know we were just talking before the show. You've been at Workday for some time now. Tell me a little bit about your role. And I know you just did something very, very unique. I'd love to talk about, because I think it'd be a perfect, topic here that we haven't broached yet, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the role is I serve as our global CTO. I think I mentioned in the intro. It sounds really cool. I'm just as important as everybody else at Workday, I promise you. And I don't mean that to be like self-effacing. literally believe that everybody has unique purpose in their role. And I don't think there's any reason to fret over hierarchy other than just an org chart, right? Um, so in my role and in the office that I lead globally is we're charged with helping craft and develop and implement strategy and vision for our technology and making sure that we don't overlook any of those perceived gaps that actually could compromise the efficacy of our customers today or hopefully the customers of the future. And so embedded directly within our engineering organization, about 8,000 workmates globally doing really good work, not perfect work, because I don't think any software or anything in life is perfect, but darn near to deliver on that and align with our core values, which we hold to be very dear and true.
Yeah, you guys have a massive responsibility when you think about the customers that you have and what you're powering. I know it's immense, so
it's
I love that. But
it's super macro, right? I mean, over 11,000 customers today.
yeah,
And that
it's
sounds like a
incredible.
lot. And then you actually focus on the workers who are, no kidding, engaging with our platform. It's
Yeah,
over 70 million workers. And I had the opportunity to kind of engage with some new hires out at our corporate office earlier this week. And I was speaking with a gentleman from Switzerland. I said, well, how many folks are in Switzerland? He's like, well, all in citizen residents, about 8 million. I said, well, that's cool. Like we're over 8 times that are
yeah,
sitting on Workday, 8 Switzerlands, right?
yes. I
And
learned that's a small country when I went there.
I mean, it's small, it's all relative, right? But the idea is
Yeah,
that this responsibility that we have to serve not only the monoliths of kind of industry, right? Those major employers with
yeah,
500,000 or more globally, but all the way down to like 100, 50, 30, like the scale. And then the crazy thing is how do we do that by serving all of that capability on a single version service, right? It's
yeah,
not Workday for SMB is so unique and like forked and bespoke versus like that monolith category. It's the same thing, right? So being
yeah,
able to scale up and scale down and then have that responsibility so that those 70 million folks, when they're coming in, they're clocking. Where does clocking go? It goes to pay. When they're doing their learning, what does learning do? It's upskilling that helps them earn more over time. Like all these things are extremely material and we feel the pressure and we do our best to make sure that it works when they expect it to be there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you guys are powering what, like 50+% of the Fortune 500 now, right? Something like that.
60% of the 500, I think 70% of the 50 or something. I mean, it's just nuts.
Yeah,
But again, I think sometimes we get, I think anybody would get kind of lost in the sauce on the big numbers, right? But it scales all the way down to like double digits on the
yeah.
exact same version of the service.
It's impressive. It really is. And you guys at 20 years old now. I remember that we talked about it on the show, Julie.
Yeah.
20 years. I remember when we were started talking about and selling cloud. I was at IBM TCS and we were selling transformation,
Yeah.
obviously. And that was a big deal, right? And all those decisions were, I mean, there's still folks making that decision. But yeah, it was so revolutionary at the time. And now here we are. It's just the norm. It's just what we do. So
I
I love it.
know. I know.
I love it.
It's
I love
hard
it.
too because the market's so noisy, right? And you're still trying to provide signal because, cloud could mean a lot of different things, I guess, because of the
Yeah.
cloud washing effect of labels.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, one of the hallmarks that I like to speak to, especially when I have the chance to evangelize our tech, which is, cloud is interesting, but one of the hallmarks of cloud is collective scrutiny and innovation. It really is. And that's only possible if you're delivering a single version service. So in
Right.
case anybody out there like feels like they're not loved after I say this, I apologize, but you don't have your own version of Netflix.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
You do not have your own version of pick your favorite game, right? It's
Yes.
literally a single version service. You just happen to have a tenant or an isolated environment where your finite details are stored, payment, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
you share that service, you share those frameworks, you share all of that so that material over time, that collective whole coming together forces that experience to become better for all. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the model. And that's
Agreed.
how you kind of identify what real true cloud looks like.
Yeah. And what I love now is like customers are helping each other, right? They're collaborating together with you and other product leaders out there that
Totally.
are co-innovating some really cool things. And I think that that's where the answers are, right? It lies in the people using this every day. And I think that's the cool thing about modern tech is the vendors have really leaned into opening the door and saying, tell us the answer, right? Tell us how we can help you, help us help you. So yeah, I really love that. One of the things that we were talking about was just you're looking very refreshed. I want to talk about, you guys have a great culture at Workday, You've been around a long time. I mean, talk about the time off that you just took, because I think that that's very rare. And I think there's some lessons in it for both employers and employees. But tell us a little bit about your recent time off.
Yeah. And Pete, if I look refreshed, what did I look like before? I feel a little bit like
Well,
vulnerable right
you
now.
looked amazing before. Anybody,
It's
most
a
people in the
two-edged sword.
military, yeah, most people in the military, they stay in shape, they stay looking sharp, man. So you were looking good. Don't
Okay,
worry.
locked and loaded. I love it.
You were locked and loaded.
So yeah, so Workday is a very unique organization. And so when I share this, I hope nobody thinks, oh gosh, you're like speaking from a position of privilege or whatever. It's not me. It's literally a company benefit. And I realize every organization has to make its own decisions on how they recognize and reward their employees, right? So I'm not saying this is the way, it's just a way. And it's a very unique thing at Workday that I love, which is globally, when a workmate achieves 10 years of service, they are afforded a sabbatical. And by that, it's 30 days, not including holidays or weekends. And so if you're smart with the calendar, it could be actually pretty amazing. And so I spent almost 7 weeks away from work, which for me, having been in the workforce for, no kidding, 30 years, I've never taken that much time off, ever. And even when it did, right?
Especially as an American.
Oh, for sure. And then you got this amazing device that never lets you go. Statistically, by the way, for most people, this is the first thing you touch in the morning and the last thing you touch before you go to bed. And that's a little bit sad. Just going to say it. So I was able to completely delete all my corporate apps, session plan, all that was kind of operationalized. And I just checked out. And it allowed me to learn a lot of things personally, professionally, and also accomplish things that I've always wanted to do, but I've never had the time. So I learned how to skydive. I spent time with my family in Germany, where I spent almost half my formative years as an Army brat.
Wow.
Went kind of rustic hiking with my son and my youngest of 4 in the mountains, and then actually flew to Africa by myself and climbed Kilimanjaro, which was just amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, that's an incredible benefit, and I know a lot of bigger companies have it, but most people don't get to or don't take advantage, and a lot of people can't afford sometimes to take advantage of those things. And I think it's I've been in the same situation. I've never had a sabbatical, but in 2021, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I hit pretty much rock bottom mentally in terms of I was burned out. I had really just revved my engine personally and professionally too much, and I was injured, not doing well, just physically, mentally. I just revved the engine way too much, like you, 30 years. And I hit a point where I was physically just done. I couldn't take another step forward in my personal life, I felt like. And I fundamentally, I had some injuries. I don't know if you guys heard that part from martial arts and whatever that were not healing. And I just wasn't sleeping. It was just bad, right? And so I actually did the same thing, but I just said, I'm taking the time off. And I booked a flight to Greece, to my homeland. And I just disappeared for 30 days. And all I did was sleep, eat right, work out, and fundamentally just empty my brain of all of the burnout that I had. But that's not something that I could have done in most of my career. I was in a position financially and otherwise to be able to do that. Most people aren't. But what would you say to employers who maybe have thought about this or have this and employees aren't use it? What advice would you give just from the lens of doing it?
I mean, if you have the opportunity to do it, and again, it's a bit interesting, right? Because what is the average tenure of an employee in an organization? It's probably less than 10 years. So those that achieve it, I think it's a grand gesture. It really is. But I would say kind of incrementally, even though I'm not a big fan of incrementalism, I think that we can actually get there without having to have grand gesture, just by being respectful of the time off policies that are in existence today, encouraging that healthy behavior of having routine disconnecting time, but also while the folks are away, please don't bother them.
Yes.
Right? I mean, unless the roof is on fire, right? But how often is that happening? Because I think one of the things that I've learned, and I shared this with my global team of direct reports as soon as I got back, is I have a new and profound respect for the need to disconnect.
Yeah.
And I promise them, and I ask them to hold me accountable, right? I will not be sending a WhatsApp, Slack, email, smoke signal, whatever it is during holidays, weekends, PTOs, unless, no kidding, the roof is on fire. And I would ask that they not do the same for me as well.
Because we're in HR, I can't not say this. I know it because when I was coming out looking for a career and in the HR space, Aon Hewitt was the first that I ever heard of that would do a year sabbatical.
Wow.
I'm sure it wasn't all paid, but back in the day, newly after combining with Exalt, and that was a perk that was available to employees, and it gave them just time to do whatever they needed, a much longer period of time and under different conditions, but I admired that then, so much so that I really thought, man, I want to be there.
Yeah, yeah. And Julie, like in my experience, what is really unfortunate is to your point, like what breaks my heart is when I hear payroll and benefits and HR leaders saying, I can't take a day off. Or when I go on vacation, I have to enter the time, fill out the thing, do this. There's no one to do it. That's so heartbreaking. But there's also a lot of folks I've seen use these sabbaticals when it's a medical thing, right? Which is unfortunate as well, because now it's kind of like a stopgap measure. But I love it. I think there's, you could, I don't want to get too philosophical, but I've heard a lot of conversations about providing people time to decompress in the workplace, but also maybe even the thought around like the whole livable wage concept in some countries around maybe we could create and spark more creativity and more innovation if we had. Now you could also create people just sitting around doing nothing, but if you had a means of where, hey, I can take the time early in my career or at some point in my career to go and pursue things that might actually turn into a product or a solution or whatever. I think any of those things, they sound very fluffy and soft, but there's material impact to them that I think, to your point, is really, really interesting.
Well, I also think that the perfect analog, and I've been thinking a lot about this too, having had this opportunity, again, I realize it might sound like a position of privilege, and I apologize to anybody who thinks like, oh my gosh, you're in rarefied air. I just use the benefit that's afforded at Workday. So please don't blame me. But I would say too, it's like, the things that I think about in terms of like, how do I correlate the need for like meaningful kind of like service, if you will, to the human mind, to the human heart, to the human soul? Well, think about what we do for our cars. Right? How often we change the oil? How often we change the belts? What does that service look like? Because if you don't do it, what happens to the car?
Yeah.
The air conditioning unit, do you have the regular service? Do you have the leaves pulled out of the foil? Do you actually do the things? Do you fill whatever the new Freon is, like that's environmentally friendly? Like you service everything else in life. Why aren't we servicing ourselves?
I agree.
Where's the meaningful intentional pause so that you can, no kidding, come back on the road for another 5,000 miles with error-free driving and keep this thing going? Because at the end of the day, let's just be super realistic. We're all going to be done with this thing called work. And what will be our legacy? And will we be ready and prepared mentally, physically, spiritually to actually enjoy whatever that twilight might be? And my goodness, my man, I am literally thinking about that more now than ever. Especially about the empty nester, which is a whole other paradigm shift, right? But it's it's been fantastic. So to anybody that's listening, right, there is no a way. I just showed Joe's way, and I wish you the best in figuring out how to make that work for your workforce.
Hey, I'm working with a client right now that's thinking about service awards. Well, Lord, isn't that a type of service award? It absolutely is. And doesn't it combat? It's the opposite of what Gen Zs are becoming notorious for, which is micro retirements, or just like quit and start somewhere else, and so we might find things like that taking hold a little bit more as a way to incent and reward longevity and faithfulness to a role or a company.
I would love it. I mean, we've seen evolutions even in the idea of like maternity and paternity. Those things did not exist when we started having children almost 30 years ago.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
so I don't bemoan it at all. I am so thrilled that the fathers at Workday get this time. There's a gentleman in our Veterans Employee Belonging group, and he was telling me, well, we call them Employee Belonging Councils, EBCs, but he was telling me they just had twins, and I didn't even know this. Shame on me as a bad people leader. But when you have twins, they double the paternity time.
Really? Woo!
Right? It's like twofer, right? And I was like so blown away by that. But when he explained what he and his wife went through with these two new creations that entered their home, and it was like, oh, I remember what it was like with one at a time.
Right.
What a fantastic idea. Double the benefit.
Joe, you've given me one more reason why my littlest child, who was born literally more than 13 pounds, should have been two babies all at once.
Wow. So
The turkey.
Billy, it's true. You are legendary.
That's a Thanksgiving turkey right there.
That
Wow.
came out in a size 3 diaper, just like his 2 older
Wow.
siblings, I swear.
Wow. So, Joe, look, I would love to talk to you about your military career a little bit before we start talking some tech. And tell me about that. How and why the Air Force? I heard you say your father was in the Army, and thank you for his service and yours. But why the Air Force? I'm always fascinated by how people ended up in different different places. But yeah, why the Air Force? What's kept you in there?
Yeah, long story short, I shared that I was an Army brat or a military brat. It was epic. I loved it. I still get goosebumps every 4th of July when the 1812 overture
Yes.
goes off and the howitzers are firing with the band. Like, it's just amazing. But I really just felt like I'd already had that experience. So kind of check, I don't need to be in the military. And I had no desire or plans to do that until I was married for a year, almost done with college. I was 23. I woke up in the morning and I looked at my wife and I said, something's missing in my life. And she's like, oh no, don't you dare.
Oh, no, it's not.
Yep.
So I called my father and I was like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. And he's like, well, that's kind of weird. Have you thought about the Air Force? Because all I knew was the Army.
Yeah.
And so I did. I explored the Air Force option. Thanks, kudos to my father for pointing me in that direction. And so I enlisted. I spent 6 years as an air transportation specialist. So I'm basically FedEx for the Air Force. We load planes, we offload planes. We don't have an overnight guarantee, but we will fly where FedEx doesn't go. That was pretty wild, right? And that was May of 2000 when I enlisted. So pre 9/11, pre all the kind of whatever.
Yeah.
And then, no kidding, fast forward 18 months, all that happens. I'm literally 2 days before my first child is born, and we're watching the morning news and we see the first towers get hit. And I'm looking at my pregnant wife who's about to deliver, like literally 2 days later, he's born. And I'm thinking to myself, what
my
in
son
the
too.
world is going on, right? And so I'd start driving down to work. I'm listening to NPR and the station because it was like the most relevant news that I could get on the way to my office. And they start freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, the second tower's hit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just so raw, right? And I'm like, okay, here am I, send me. Like, I'm already in this game. And so I got to do some wild stuff, my man, during those 6 years. Supported a lot of theaters, a lot of campaigns and operations. I finished my bachelor's during that time. I finished my master's. I had the opportunity to commission into the reserve, which I did. And I started my path as an officer in the logistics domain, which is just a superset of air transportation, right? So it's fuels, it's supply, it's plans, it's
important stuff, though.
Super fun. Like, nothing moves without logistics. Let's just be super honest. What can Brown do for you?
You can grind people to a halt.
That's something I will tell you the military is pristine at. I know the Marine Corps has done work with UPS and some others on logistic movement.
Yeah.
And the ability to move a city and a world that's sustainable in 96 hours around the globe is incredible.
Yeah, it's not always efficient, but it will always be effective.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe with more AI will help us be more thoughtful about how we actually structure, But, it's been fun. I've served. The reserve is a very unique animal. In the reserve components of the Air Force, right, you have the Air National Guard, which is predominantly a state mission. It's called Title 32. That's super nuanced. And then you have the reserve, which is the federal side of the reserve components, which is Title 10. And so that they kind of do separate but equal type support. And so as a reservist, then I've moved around and I've had assignments all over the United States. I did my command tour at Travis. I did my Pentagon time. I just finished serving as a deputy group commander at Tinker Air Force Base. And effective 1 July, I'm now the deputy wing commander of the 94th Airlift Wing based at Dobbins Air Reserve Base in Georgia.
And congrats on your promotion, by the way. Congrats on that, Colonel.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You can just call me Joe. That's awesome.
Full bird.
But yeah, it's been great. But that's also come at a slight cost too, right? Because the idea of being a citizen airman or a citizen soldier, right, or a reservist, right, in any capacity, it does in fact mean that you have to be competent and professional in two different careers. And so that only exacerbates this kind of idea of burnout. Like, how do you actually have meaningful time to disconnect, not just from one side, but from both sides? And so, I don't know, it's been an epic adventure. I love the opportunity. It is fully in line with my proclivity for all things we before me. I love being part of a mission-centered organization like the Air Force Reserve. I've met some of the most incredible people in my entire life, serving alongside them in various capacities. And I honestly have zero regrets, and I would not exchange the experience for anything else.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I don't think people, that's one of the things I want to talk to you about. We've been trying to do some work here. I do a lot of work with Hire Heroes USA, a VSO, where I help counsel veterans,
Mm.
spouses, getting them into the workforce, right? Help them negotiate salaries, help them build their resumes, and otherwise just help them with career advice. And um, it's a gap, and it's unfortunate because we have these. I think about the guys I was in the Marines with, right? One of my friends is an attorney now. One of my friends, runs his own business. One of my friends, I mean, like they go to places and they excel in arenas, any and every. And yet I find that a lot of employers just aren't, there's a mismatch and they're not getting together. And it really bums me out because I think about the way where we're headed with AI and all the things that are available to us. And the emotional intelligence and leadership and capabilities of these folks coming out of the military is ripe for this generation and this wave. Um, and I just wonder, like,
Mm.
what can we do to get them closer? Like, as a reservist, I think you have the benefit of like, you're kind of in your career, right? Whereas so you have this dual identity, but whereas with an active duty person, that is your identity. And then when that identity's over, you don't belong anywhere anymore. Now you have to go belong somewhere else. And there's a bit of a trouble with that. But yeah, just curious your thoughts on that transition challenge and how we get more employers to get into tap that skill set, that skill pool.
So the first thing I'll say is I don't think there's any malicious kind of intent by
No, I
how
don't.
things operate today.
Yeah.
I almost think back to like kind of that 1980s esque commercial where they would tell you something cool that you didn't know, and it was like the more you know, with the stars
Yeah.
streaking across the sky, right? And
Yeah.
so maybe this is our the more you know moment.
Yeah.
So I will start off by saying, and I don't want to minimize, and I'm going to come back and speak to this. There is perception, right, wrong, or indifferent, that those who serve come out broken.
Yeah.
So that's perception number one that I think we need to be very thoughtful about because, and again, there are some people who sign that blank check and do suffer invisible wounds
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Agreed.
But I would say the
100%.
vast majority don't. And so, like, how do we actually kind of like recognize it, but also not create a blanket judgment or blanket perception around that? Because let's be honest, there's a bit of a risk assumption when you think about like,
Yeah.
that for an organization. And the second part is I think this is going to be really interesting as we shift away from like think about the static, hard kind of like line of job requirements. You have to have like 15 years of experience, blah, blah, blah. And we shift to more of a skills-based mindset, right?
Yes.
And to
Yeah.
your point, this is the most, for those that haven't had the opportunity to serve in military, in the military services, this is the most fascinating part. You take a young man or a young woman and they're immediately through this crucible of basic training, irrespective of where you do it, thrust in this environment where every single norm is shattered. You're going to
Yep.
be in with every category of socioeconomic status. You're going to be in every category of religious or non-religious. Everything that you thought was your worldview is now going to be amplified or challenged by everybody else that's thrust upon you in this group that you have to survive with, right? That crucible moment. And then it doesn't stop there. Every assignment, you don't get to pick who you're working with, right? The
Right.
machine tells
Right.
you you're going to go work at, 3rd Company, 4th Battalion, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
show up. And then there's a gal from New York and a dude from South Carolina and, some schmuck from the Dakotas. And you all get together and you're like, oh, crap. But what do? You recognize it
Yeah.
and
You
you
bond.
focus because you have a mission to accomplish. And through that, you get to know more about yourself. You might have the opportunity to shatter a bit of that ethnocentric lens that you may or may not have had growing up.
Yeah.
And candidly, that's one of the richest rewards is being able to have, no kidding, full cross-section exposure of these great United States through my military service and meeting people from every walk of life and being better for it.
What would you say to veterans coming out right now? Like, how would you tell them to maybe prepare themselves, position themselves? What would your advice be to them?
Yeah,
Today?
so it's the same advice I would give to anybody and kind of in that job market. And it's very sad when people start networking at the point of need,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of too late.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
like, literally, kind of like even the VA's TAP program, it's like, hey, I know you're going to leave in the next 90 days. I'm going to teach you what you need to know to transition. I'm like, we're kind of behind the curve a little bit. right? So when these young men and women come into the service, it should candidly be part of like a first year introduction. Like eventually you're going to leave the service and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
But here's the things that you need to start thinking about. Like, what interests you? What would you like to do? Is there something that's an analog to what you do today? So, for example, let's just pretend I went in the army and I was assigned to be a dental tech. Well, there's
Hmm.
clearly like a path for me to be a dental tech outside, right? A licensure or whatever it is. But let's just say that I was a grunt, right? I slept in a hole that I dug and I carried my rifle everywhere. Well, what should I do? And the unfortunate thing is, well, you should be a security guard, you should be a truck driver. Yeah, those are great roles. Like, seriously, follow your passion.
Yeah.
But did you know that you could also do project management? You've probably,
Payroll.
yeah,
Yes.
you can literally work in HR, right? You could
Yes.
run payroll. If you are able to organize and create, rationalize the complex and make it simple, hello, that's every day in the military. Maybe you should think about payroll, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
a great role for you. So those are the kind of things I think we need to overcome. It goes back to this idea of evaluating people on more of a holistic skills based outlook as opposed to kind of like these classic requirements that candidly are very stale and don't speak to the quality or the innate capability of the actual individual.
I agree. I think there's a lot of folks that look at what they did in the military and think, well, there's nothing here for them. But they don't look at the leadership capabilities and like I think
Soft
about, like, I
skill,
think of,
right?
yeah,
Soft
right. Like,
skills.
I mean, but my God, the adaptability, the leadership. I mean, I remember when I came out of the military, I mean, not to brag, but I just felt like I could have lapped every leader that I was reporting to. Like, they didn't have so many
That's called
just
Marine training, Pete.
yeah, just concepts of like, I'm like, I could have smoked all of you. Like, you don't even know you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to lead people. Have you ever trained? I just took for granted that all leaders were trained the way I was. I didn't know that any different when I came out. I thought, hell, what do you mean you don't know this or that? It's a little bit of shock.
It's a
Yeah.
fair point.
And I,
And
and
I
I
also
think you're
say
right. I
too,
think there's
like
this,
being able to
sorry, go ahead.
navigate. So I don't know if you're familiar with the term VUCA, but it's in like the parlance of military planning or whatever. It's
Yeah.
volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Every single Joe, from Private Joe to General Joe, at some point has to master the VUCA, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to have all the information, all the time, all the resources, all the money, all the manpower to do whatever it is that you're asked to get done. But you still have to get it done.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of like these soft skill kind of moments that also bleed into the hard skill side that a lot of these young men and women who have served can, no kidding, walk out the door and take all of that with them in that pressure cooker environment and now apply it to where literally lives are not on the line unless you're in healthcare.
Yeah.
And then be able to deliver in a way that adds tangible value to the organization that's willing to kind of break free from the blinders and see the potential in this amazing talent pool called veterans.
Yeah, I love it, man. I want to see more of that. I think there's just such a world of opportunity for them. And we just had on a gentleman named Eddie Dunn, who's on here. Him and his organization are doing some incredible work with the government and hopefully some HR tech firms. And they've got a tool that I think, Julie, we were talking about
Yes,
this,
we
but
were
afterwards I
recently.
thought about it. I think you could apply it to other populations like
Absolutely.
interns and internal maybe ERG type groups or something like that, where you could curate some nurturing of that talent to pull out what they have in skills and fortify what they don't and make them ready for the civilian world. And so I think that's it's just amazing. I'd love to see more of it.
Yeah, I think skills is easy talk for HR leaders, but it's really hard to
Yeah.
believe that you're going to bypass, the 15 years of experience in a similar role and actually level up and follow the skill
Yeah.
set that you're looking for. So I think we've got some maturing to do there.
Well,
Yeah,
it's not
for
just
sure.
a maturing in a mindset, it's also maturing in the technical capabilities that are available to them at any point in time. We've been investing, I think you guys probably both know, we've been investing for a lot of years now in building this thing called the Skills Cloud, which we believe today
Yes.
is the largest and cleanest corpus of skills on planet Earth. It's been
Mhm.
inferred by all those participating customers across the 11,000, but it also benchmarks against some very unique catalogs that are public source and managed and curated. And when you think about that, then if you can start from a position of having this inventory that's real and meaningful and current and not
Right.
stale and outdated, now you can start to use that as kind of your bedrock, right? Not only from the initial evaluation side, but then from the potential, like now that you're here And I see you through this kind of career pathing, for example, that we might do within our Workday Career Hub of like, hey, you're here today, but you want to be here. Here's your mentors, here's
Yeah.
your connections, here's the recommended learning, because we know that there's a delta in skills that you have versus what you have where you need to be. Here's the learning potential to upskill you. Like, these are the things that need to happen. And
Yeah.
this is why it's important to align and partner with organizations that can offer that capability so that you can move past the mental model of, "Oh, I don't know if it'll work," towards one of, it can work, and we're going to operationalize this technology that's available to materially improve not only the organization, but literally the individual.
Right. Joe, something that, I can't speak for the other services, but one thing I can tell you that the Marine Corps does incredibly well that I think the civilian world could learn from is that, and they didn't have the tech to do it. The Marine Corps knows exactly the skills we have and who's ready to go at all times. The force readiness is a nonstop metric that our commanders and our senior leaders are always operationally making sure we are ready to go. Who's under, and if Private Schmuckatelli can't come through the door on a CQB drill properly, he's going to go repeat that until he is ready to go. So we can, any minute, glass breaks, we have to pop on a ship and go. We got to know that we're ready. We have to have people's administrative in mind, S1, S2, everything. Everybody has to come to the table ready. And they know what they have. They know what they don't have, from equipment to skills to people. And every commander knows what they're going into battle with. And I don't think most companies, even today, can do that right now.
Yeah.
They couldn't put their finger on what they have to go into battle.
Well, it comes at a real cost, though, on the military side. And for any veterans that are it's called, they know that, right? Based on your service, it's either an MOS or an AFSC, or if you're in the Navy, it's a rating, right? And every single one of those has a skill level associated traditionally, right?
Right.
So, and very granular, like Schmuckatelli. I love it, Private Schmuckatelli. I'll say Airman Schmuckatelli, right? Like Airman Schmuckatelli and his immediate supervisor knows exactly what he needs to do to be classified as competent, trained, and ready in that discrete MOS, AFSC, or rate. And by the way,
and that leader is accountable.
For sure. And all those roll up into a collection of capabilities called a uniform type code, a UTC, which is then reported up all the way to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, right? So hierarchy of that is radically different than what we might look at in the civilian workspace. But I'd also say, too, that's actually looking at it at a macro with kind of a subset of skills that are kind of hidden or kind of obfuscated. The thing that I think we're looking at the civilian side more is like, how do we actually amplify and pull up the skills, right? As beyond just kind of the rating or the qualification. Because let's be honest, you can go to Paper Mill of the USA or whatever and get a certification, but that doesn't mean that you're actually skilled. And so that we need to be very thoughtful about that.
Yeah, we've talked this concept of practice, right? Like how much reps had you had doing that thing? So I'd love to see the. There's a lot of lessons that I think that the civilian world can learn from military talent that I'm taking upon myself to make sure that
we're going to share every one of them before the year is over, probably.
No, I'm gonna. Don't worry, it's coming. Don't worry. Anyway, for another day. All right. So look, I want to talk tech with you, Joe. That's obviously the your lens. I'm sure your love. Where are we right now with HR tech, just tech in general? And one of the things that people I think keep saying is SaaS is dead. Is SaaS dead? Like, what are we talking about? what are we going to be talking in 5-10 years now?
Yeah, everybody wants a soundbite. And it sounds nice, but it actually doesn't play long. It's kind of like Britney Spears, right? It's not going to be enduring. And no, for those Britney fans out there, like, look, oops, I did it again. I named somebody in public that I probably shouldn't have. But I just think about things that are enduring and things that aren't. And candidly, sound bites are not enduring, and I acknowledge them, but I don't spend too much time on them. So when somebody says SaaS is dead, I smile and I just move on because I've got other things to do. Right? Also, anytime somebody tries to oversimplify wildly complex things, I'm immediately suspect. So I would say, where are we at? So I think it's important to acknowledge where we came from. Right. So Pete, you were a pro on the HR side within the Marine Corps, which is just epic. I've been on the opposite end. So a logistics guy who's had to suffer under the HR umbrella of my Air Force. And it's not the airmen. It's not. I literally have mad sympathy and maybe a dose of empathy for what they have to deal with, because I literally have 18-year-old young men and women coming into my organizations today who are like, you're going to join the world's greatest Air Force. And then they get through their tech training And they're like, well, now log in through this Java thick client into this application. And now these are called function keys. And you have to hit function keys
Yeah.
and tabs to move around. And I'm like, how can you,
Mainframes.
it's
Yeah,
it's all old school, right?
it
And
is.
and all of the data stores have the inject of stored procedures and logic. And the moment you start putting logic next to data, like it gets super brittle, right? And
Yes.
so these
Yeah.
young kids are coming in, these digital natives who are like grew up here, right? And they're having to function key and tab in this green screen environment,
Yep.
and it's pathetic, right?
It is. It is.
And it candidly doesn't have to be that way, but there's just been this kind of like, well, it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in the paradigm of most large organizations, bureaucratic inertia takes over, and then we're like, let the next person fix it, right? So there's more other things that are pressing. That's cool and stuff until it becomes a talent problem. And I candidly foresee that within kind of the domain of the military. So I look forward to them kind of operationalizing and becoming a bit more future-proof or future-ready. A lot of organizations have already done this today. There are some, even within the Fortune 500 today, who are still running on a very similar version of probably the old
Oh,
eBiz or whatever it is. And that's
yep.
okay. That's their choice. But I would give them mild warning that there's too much to lose by not having at least a path towards a future
Yes.
state. Now, where we are today, I think, as you know, both of you are wildly read up on what's happening in the market. There are options aplenty in terms of where
Yep.
you want to go on your HR journey. And I think that's great, right? Options are wonderful. But I've actually never been a fan of like buffets, right? Because everything is just mediocre at best. And, you're always having to like fight for that next slice of roast beef that certainly runs out by the time I get to it anyways.
Yeah.
And so like, I just think there's a unique opportunity to think about platforms as not only just a
Right.
investment kind of mindset, but a strategy. And where you have the opportunity to create simplification through holistic investment, right, across those key anchor systems that run your business, right? Whether it's CRM, whether it's inventory, whether it's warehousing and supply chain, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, make strategic bets because we've arrived at a space where, yes, you can go bespoke and yes, you can go off and do whatever you got to do. But what that does is it exacerbates kind of this model of data fratricide, right?
Mhm.
You have silos everywhere and security models everywhere and experiences everywhere and processes everywhere. And somebody is doing the Lord's work in the background, like literally
Yeah.
hold it together, right? And
Access databases.
for sure, my man, like any integration, any
Uh,
database, any middleware. And you as the end user kind of see through that, right? Even though there's a nice veneer of like, it's okay. It's this proverbial meme of the dog sitting in the fire cafe holding a thing. Everything's fine.
yeah.
No, it's not. I can promise you can see smoke, and where there's smoke, there's fire. And that is often manifest through this kind of like disparate collection where it felt right to go like, man, we got to go individual here. We got to go bespoke. Don't,
Right.
at what cost? Right. And this is where I think organizations need to like do that gut check. Am I going me before we, or am I pursuing we before me? Because sometimes that 100% solution, if you believe in your heart of hearts it's the only thing possible and it deviates from the
Yeah.
strategy, then please follow your heart. Like, do not be untrue to yourself. But if the 90% solution will still take you there and it doesn't
Right.
compromise the grand strategy of simplification, please pursue we before me.
There needs to be a lot more scrutiny around where the 90% works and where you really do need to look at something that's a point solution.
For
And
sure.
Yeah.
and that's evolving. I think leaders are more and more getting to the point where they get that. Like, okay, let's put critical mass. Great. Now where am I special? Where am I truly special? Which is hard because every organization out there tells you how special and complex they are.
We are, in fact, all snowflakes. Every snowflake is.
Every due diligence start after working at Disney, hearing people say to me, "We're complicated. You don't understand." I was like, "You have no clue.
Yeah.
You have no idea. You
Yeah.
have no idea what complex is." But here's something that I don't think a lot of HR tech firms understand, and I don't think a lot of people understand. The rules for HR and payroll are precisely the same for everyone in every location, right? It's kind of like the NFL. It's not like they're all playing with the same set of rules. How they go about playing the game around those rules is up to them. And that's what makes them unique and special. The problem is so many of them hold on to what they believe is unique and special from a time when that's what they had to do to compete or get around something or deal with an inequity in a system or whatever. And you're right. It ain't broke. Let's don't fix it. And oh no, that's change. And what I find is that in my experience, HR is one of the worst organizations at actually leading change, but they're the ones who needs to be on the point of making sure that the company is changing on a regular sort of learn, unlearn, relearn, reinvent, agile sort of model, right? And so it's so ironic that they often are the ones that are guarding and saying, no, we can't disrupt this, or we can't. I literally worked with one of the last things I did at Deloitte. I worked with one of the biggest brands on the planet. You would know their name if I said it. They were looking. This was 2013. They were looking at cloud. They were looking at the big three, and they were looking at outsourcing HR, right? And in the end, what they basically said is we will throw as much money and bodies as we need to at what we have because we trust it works, to keep it working so that we don't have to go through the risk or the change of whatever we might have selected. And they ultimately had to select something. But the point is like, where does it end? If that's what you're like, how long can you kick the can down the road? I walked down the hallway. Here's the last one. I walked down the hallway the other day at a major HCM tech event, and I talked to an executive director of learning and development for a major firm. And she was telling me about all the ambitions that they have, right? About we want to do this, we want to do that. And I said to her, what's your cloud platform? And she just stopped. And I knew the answer. I knew right away. She smiled and she said, PeopleSoft. And I was like, yeah. I go, when do you guys move into the cloud? And she's like, I don't know. And I was thinking, you're not doing any of this. You're not doing any of that. So how are we going to make it if we've got how are companies going to get on to AI and utilize and activate their own language models, large language models and data sets if they aren't even in a baseline cloud solution?
Well, if it makes her feel any better, I have like 13 different learning systems that I have to use in the Air Force.
Right. Yeah.
Right. There's one based on Moodle. There's like
13 different bosses. Yeah.
And I'm like, where do I go to do this training? They're like, just go do the training. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, do it if you want to get promoted. Yeah.
It sounds like some of the cavemen that creep over to the advisory side right about now, and they're like, "Yeah, we know we're 30 years behind the times, but we want to." But it does
just keep doing it.
It does make me think about, as in the early days of SaaS, a lot of companies leapfrogged the legacy system investment, right, and were able to go right into SaaS. So now, is there a similar pattern or opportunity with AI where companies can hope to leapfrog? I think what you're saying, Pete, is it's just not in your DNA. Like, it's very highly unlikely, but there are those out there who are having that conversation and saying, well, can I adopt AI tools without the full HCM investment? And it's certainly the path less taken, right? And we've heard some crash and burn stories in that regard.
You're so right, Julie. There is massive risk reward in that. Mark Benioff said the funniest thing I don't know if it was at the last Dreamforce or whatever, but he was like doing his typical grandstanding, which, I have a healthy respect for. And he's like, look, just don't DIY your AI.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, that's very pithy and very catchy. And for some reason, I'm liking it. So here I am almost a year later, probably still thinking about it. I think the risk is that, remember I said there was an element of cloud washing early on, right? Where everything just got the label and everyone just assumed. The same things happened with AI. Any amazing kind of tech trend that hits kind of that hype cycle or that hype curve that we're all familiar with, it will typically result in some washing, right? And so the idea then, and to your point, you've seen a lot of crash and burns, is can an organization that candidly isn't on the build side take the capability and then apply it against yesterday's whatever and expect a different result? The answer is maybe. Your mileage may in fact vary. But I think one of the things that I think is important to consider as you make investments is to buy when you can and build when you must. And to expand on that, it would be buy for standardization, build for differentiation. And to Pete's point, most of what we do is not differentiating. It's by law, it's by statute. Like we have to hit these mechanics, whether it's getting the pay rate or multi-jurisdictional pay, like for those poor people in Jersey and Connecticut and New York, right? We know this. So am I buying to just kind of standardize? Or do I have this like weird bone in me that wants to build because I think it's going to differentiate? And this goes back to this platform mindset, not only from a functionality perspective, but also from a trust perspective, right? I still think we're early, right, in this AI journey where people are having to have healthy questions and very healthy, meaningful dialogue in terms of like, is this right? Is it ready? Should we do it? Because not everybody is seeking the same level of feel good in the market. So, for example, a benchmark, like within the last month, Workday achieved its ISO 42001 certification. We also received the accreditation for the NIST AI risk management framework, right?
Congrats.
Enterprise technology company to achieve both.
Awesome.
It was amazing. And it wasn't even like my organization. It was our ethics, compliance, policy, trust, responsible AI. They all made the magic happen, right? But the deal is that you can't just run with scissors when it comes to this type of stuff, right? Seek for the functionality for sure, but then double click into like, is it safe? Is it responsible? Can I trust it? Does it have third-party validation? Because we're going to quickly approach, I think, a domain or a model where trust will be broken. And we cannot afford that when it matters most, especially in these regulated environments with human capital, with financial management, et cetera.
Do you think we're moving too fast, or do you think it's just inherently the way it has to be because of the type of tech that it is?
I don't think we're moving too fast. I think we're candidly on course. I think a lot of the acceleration in terms of frenzy is being fueled by marketing hype. Everybody has to do that on some level. I don't bemoan an organization for it. But I do cast mild judgment, if I could say that without being condescending, against those who are using brand or moniker or labeling against things that they know full well are not what they're trying to sell it as. But look, that's been happening since the days of kind of the medicinal snake oil salesman who would show up in a wagon to a small frontier town, right? So like, buyer beware, caveat emptor exists in 2025 just like it did in 1900.
Well, and I think leaders, C-suites and others, maybe exacerbate that by sending some of their recruits, right? And saying like, look, do something AI or figure out how to incorporate AI. And there's these mandates out there that's saying, go and use this, like make this happen. I don't want to be behind the curve. Well, they don't even know what they're looking for, right? They're just on a mission to incorporate AI, and that leaves many people just like drooling in the supposed to do with this?
You're right, Julie. But I think that the intent is admirable. The intent is something that they should be seeking for. But I would also say too that there is a hierarchy of needs, right? Maslow coined it across how we operate kind of in the real world. And that same hierarchy could have grand application to technology or any other domain. And so you have to start with your foundations, right? I love it. Just go do some AI. That was hilarious, my man. Like,
just do it.
But just sprinkling AI on a very weak, fragmented, fractured, at-risk foundation of siloed security models, et cetera. I'm sorry, it's just not going to solve.
Well, and it all comes down to data, right? I mean, how do you do AI or how do you leapfrog, legacy systems if you don't know where your data is or your data is in miserable shape?
That's one of the things that I love about how so it's actually one of the reasons I joined Workday. So backing up a little bit, I did HR tech before Workday. I'm not going to talk about it. You can see it in my LinkedIn if you want to, but I had a breakup moment. Like, no kidding. Joe Wilson was like brushing his teeth one morning and I'm staring into my own eyes and I like got sucked into my soul. like, what are you doing? This is terrible. It's not even real. You should get out of it. And so I was leaving the backbone of back office and I was going to go to another vendor. I had the offer in hand. It was epic. And then Workday called like last minute and I'm like, I know what you do. I kind of poo-pooed it. Holy smokes. I'm grateful that they were patient with me. One of the things that drew me here,
in spite of yourself,
in spite of myself, for sure, be like that cocky airman, right? So, but one of the things that drew me here and kept me here was this religious kind of like fervor around just doing one thing. And so that was a very early decision. The concept of cloud for sure was novel in 2005. I joined in 2013. We only had a few hundred customers at the time, so we were still early days. But this idea of doing a single version service that is going to be used up and down the level of scale has returned ridiculous reward by way of opportunity to Workday. And to your point, Julie, first and foremost is data, because the data model that we represent for finance and HR in Workday is 1,000% homogenous, meaning literally looks the same as every customer on planet Earth. And so when we think about the application then against this emerging tech called AI broadly, right? Whether it's ML, whether it's NLP, whatever it is, and even into agentic as we come forward there, right? Is this idea then that we have this wildly secure, wildly clean, and enormously huge data set. In the last fiscal year, we earned our fourth comma, over 1 trillion transactions on the service, all against a representative model. So what are we going to do with it? Well, with the trust of our customers, we're going to apply it against these models, against these frameworks, so then accelerate work so that we can, I don't know, maybe like go home on time.
I know, right? Take a day off.
Oh my God. Like, but it's like the idea of the 40-hour work week, I always kind of like chortle a little bit, like who works just 40 hours?
Oh yeah.
It's possible. And I also would challenge organizations to not just speak about the benefits of AI to the organizational level, right? I think the missing discussion point broadly in the market has been, what will AI do for the individual? I do not think enough has been kind of like created or addressed on that topic. I think that's actually fueled a little bit of that fear or that uncertainty or that doubt. And yes, we should absolutely speak to the economic and the efficiency gains and everything else at that programmatic, operational, organizational level. But don't forget the individual. Corporations, companies, whatever you want to call it, they're just a collection of people.
Yeah.
And so how can we make sure that we have narrative that speaks to them and speaks to the promises and the wonderful outcomes that can come with ethical, responsible AI delivered so that they can then be more efficient and effective. And then at 5 o'clock, close the laptop and go walk the dog, right?
Yes. Yeah. 5 o'clock. That'd be great, right? And so you're basically saying don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think. But I love it, man. But what would you say to a CTO or just an executive team right now that is behind, that fundamentally has not made a decision, has kicked the things down the road, kicked the can down the road? What would you tell them right now? What would your advice be?
The advice would be is to start somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have the luxury of being able to kind of zoom out, really consider whether or not a platform strategy makes sense for your organization. Because candidly, the more tricks that are in your bag increases exponential workloads that are often hidden from view. Human capital is the most expensive fixed against those workloads. And candidly, the risk quotient is just astronomically higher when you have that collection of systems that candidly are operating wildly independently and never come together. So think platform, and then don't try to like what's the old proverb, like, how do you eat an elephant? It just sounds gross, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Like, it's one bite at a time. So don't think that you have to boil the ocean at once. Here's all these like silly little expressions I'm using in one sentence, but like just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay if it's not like the perfect decision at that time, but at least at this point you have forward momentum, because the longer you stay where you're at while others continue forward momentum only creates time, space, and distance that is getting harder to overcome. And so I'm not trying to be like fear, doom and gloom, whatever, but think about the possibilities. Talk to your peers. Like, I get it. Like, every vendor in America, go to a conference, they're all gonna love you and say how much they think you're awesome, but like, just talk to your peers, like do those networks, whatever it is, and then start somewhere.
Agreed. Joe, I really appreciate, man. This is, I could go on and on. I want to ask you a couple rapid fire questions, if you don't mind, to wrap up, and then we'll get you on your way. I know it's Friday. So the first one I want to ask you is, what's a leadership lesson you learned from the military that you're still using as kind of a go-to today as a tech executive?
Really simple. I actually share it. I learned it early on, and I share it at every opportunity within the military construct, which is know your job, right?
Yeah.
at every level. And by the way, everybody has the opportunity to be a leader, even if you're not classically categorized in that role. You're still leading somewhere. You can lead from the front, you can lead from the middle, and you can lead from the back. So know your job, love your airmen. So in the military context or parlance, that would be me telling you to, love your brothers and sisters that you serve with. In my civilian workplace, I would say love your workmates. And love doesn't mean pander. Love doesn't mean soft touch all the time or whatever. Love means I love you enough to hold you accountable. I love you enough to expect more from you. I love you enough to stay late to help you get better because maybe you need some retraining in that CQ function, right?
Yeah.
So so know your job, love your airmen. And then thirdly, get after the mission.
Yep.
Right.
I love that.
I think it's like always fourth and down, like fourth quarter, your third down inches, you're right there at the goal line. Like it's like make or break every day. So get after the mission, know your job, love your airmen, get after the mission. That's my leadership 101.
I love it. I love it. How about a book that you've read? I know the Air Force, at least the Marine Corps, we have a Commandant's reading list. There's great books on there. I'm reading one right now, Legacy by, I think it's James Kerr. I don't know if you ever, the All Blacks rugby team. He talks about why they're so special in terms of the way they bond. But what's one of your favorite books off the Air Force reading list that you have read that you would recommend?
So not off the Air Force reading list, Pete, but one that I give to every single new senior NCO. So as a former NCO before I became an officer, the non-commissioned officers are the backbone of our entire military. Like they literally run the game and they are
NCOs.
amazing. Yes. And our NCOs, by the way, are ripe for like plug and play in corporate America. They're just incredible.
We have one in the White House now.
Oh,
First Marine.
For sure.
Like, Vice President is a corporal.
Yeah, and a Marine. How about that?
And a Marine. How about that?
You have to make that plug, Pete. So here's the deal. Like the book that I actually give to every new NCO that's in any organization that I have is called Radical Candor. Yeah. And it changed the way that I interact. I think over time we've become societally way too kind of risk averse in terms of being able to call a spade a spade. This book teaches you to address kind of the behavior and not the person. And it does it in such a wonderful way. And I love the quadrant that the author presents too. From kind of like ruinous empathy all the way up to like radical candor, which is very kind of opposite in terms of poles. But trust me, it is a book well worth reading. Again, I gift it to every new NCO within my remit, and I would share it and say anybody should just totally study it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Corporals run the world, man. All right, last one. Your advice, one piece of advice to CTOs out there in 2025, what would it be? Invest
in your teams because you're only going to be here for a minute.
Why is that?
It's because look, time is finite. I don't know how long I'm going to be at Workday. I'm so grateful for the almost 12 years that I've been here. But this also is what I do, not who I am. And eventually I'll go off to that wild blue yonder, as we say in the Air Force, and I'll hopefully be hanging out in Florida, and hopefully my wife will be wearing beautiful turtle earrings just like Julie. And,
I love it.
Right? But so am I prepared, right? Deliberately preparing that next generation to no kidding, take the flag and lead on.
Your empty nesterhood is starting to shine already, Joe.
I can't
a little
wait.
Early even.
I can't
but
wait.
let me tell you, it's worth it. It's worth every second of it. You can't wait. Excited
and then it's grandkids down, so we'll see.
Well, I love it for you, man. I think it's so awesome. And thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with our audience. This has been so great for veterans, for HR leaders, for CTOs. I know we'll get something out of this, but where can everyone reach out to you? How do we connect? And, what, if anything, can we help you with?
Yeah. So look, I was just talking to one of our senior leaders in People Are Purpose, what we call our HR. And I told her, and I'll share it again, literally twice within an hour or so. I don't have all the answers, right? But I am wildly curious. So if I said something today that was provoking or that caused offense or whatever it is, please hit me up on LinkedIn. If you just search Joe Wilson Workday, there's just one of me here. I had to fire the other one. He was a data center guy. And I was like, there can only be one. Just kidding. But there was a Joe Wilson, but I didn't fire him. But anyways, just look Joe Wilson Workday, connect with me. Let's create the dialogue. And if you feel like I missed something, please let me know. I'm curious. I want to know, and I want to get better every day. So thanks for your help in advance.
Awesome. I really appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so much. Thanks as always to everyone who listened. And hey, do us a favor. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Share the podcast. It always helps out, and we'll be back with more content soon.